what we're going to do is I'm going to throw out a genre, right? We're going to
Yeah.
give some comic book recommendations for that particular genre for new readers to dive into. But follow along in the chat, throw out your recommendations as well. All right, Nick, I'm going to throw it to you to start things off here. Do you have a particular genre that you would like to start with that you can give a handful of recommendations towards?
Let's go like action. Let's just go with
Okay.
some easy ones right off the bat. So I know it depends on, the action's kind of a broader category, right? But I'm thinking of books that are a little bit more faster paced. There's more action, pun intended, right there. From issue to issue, there's less talking head, less drama kinds of stuff. So I'm thinking of books that are in your face, the quick pacing, things like that. So maybe a book like Conan has a lot of history behind it. It's always action packed. Your blood gets pumping when you're reading that book. Yes, it is a sci-fi book at times. Yes, it is a drama. Yes, it is whatever, a fantasy book too. But it also has some action qualities to it. We mentioned Daniel Warren Johnson and Murder Falcon before. Pretty much anything Daniel Warren Johnson touches turns into an action book just because of that feeling that he brings to every single title that he has. We have some other newer books too. We have Redcoat, which is arguably like a historical kind of a book too, but it also has a lot of great action scenes. He's learning from different people. He's applying those lessons in each issue. He's just having all those great interactions, and it ends up him being on the run from somebody at some point. That genre alone has a lot of different opportunities. And so if you're into those action blockbuster kind of movies during the summertime, there are some comics you can gravitate towards that give you that same hair-raising moments that you would expect from a big blockbuster movie, but in comic format. There's tons of different books out there, and these genres bleed over each other as well. But those are just some books that come to mind. What about you? You have any other additions to that list?
I'm going to go with my favorite genre. And I feel like there's a lot that we can pull from this. I am a crime aficionado. I love a really, really good crime comic. And this is so on the nose. Like, this is like, really? This is what you're going to choose? But it's just so perfect.
I knew you'd pick it. So
for crime, you gotta go criminal. Like, it is just the seminal of crime fiction at this moment. And it is such a great storyline that gets to look at a plethora of different characters and all of the unsavory things that they do and the circumstances that they go through. That is definitely a more gritty street level type of crime, though. That's like the petty thief kind of crime, right? But there's other facets that come along with that. Another example that I would definitely encourage people to read is the Parker books, right? They're adaptations of the novels, but Darwin Cook did the adaptations. And if you know Darwin Cook, his artwork is incredible. It's stunning. Darwin Cook has a very minimalistic approach. If you like the works of Chris Samney, if you like the works of Marcos Martin, something like that, it's definitely going to resonate and hit with you. I would finish it off with an anthropomorphic book. I feel like they're all the rage nowadays with things like Beneath the Trees and Escape. Right. I would encourage people, if you like the Maltese Falcon approach, the down on his luck detective, right? And a dame comes in and gives him a case. Read Black Sad. It is such a stunning piece of work here, both visually and narratively. It gives you those feels of that 50s era crime drama, right? And it goes through all the tropes, but in a really fun, fantastical way. Because again, like you have those anthropomorphic creatures, all right, the animals that you're following along with. It gives you a different emotional resonance than you get from the human characters. They are awesome. All right, Nick. What's the next category?
Dude, I gotta blend two together because I don't have the mental capacity to like differentiate those two at the moment. But like the sci-fi fantasy area, I think. Okay. Like the sci-fi fantasy, I want to kind of get into that because you can go into a lot of different places, and I think comics really shine in this particular genre. Like they do in all the genres, but this one they can really stretch the limits of imagination. They can take us to places where we couldn't have gone otherwise. And I know we have a couple big books that we talked about in the past, even some of the creative teams, like we talked to Darcy and Ian about Little Bird and Precious Metal. Like arguably that's in that realm where it's like, it's a book that comes out, it's Eisner winning Little Bird. It's Eisner snubbed Precious Metal, like it takes you to places that you never thought you could go. And there's a lot of rich text to it, a lot of great themes, mixing of like, is it in the future? Is it in the past? Technology is impossible, yet it's primitive at the same time. It's kind of stretching your imagination. So I think those are some great examples of those. We talk about Kaya, which is one of our favorite books out right now. What an incredible book that is. It's tons of action as well. But again, it has that feel to it. It has those anthropomorphic areas where certain characters are animal-like creatures and they interact with our demon or whatever, our orc or human-based or our robot or our monster. So it just does a great job of like pulling in all those different themes into that same title. Of course, we talked about some books that are on my list that I haven't gotten to yet, like East of West.
Oh man. Okay. East of West is like if you combine sci-fi with a Western.
That's
and
true.
that's the storyline that you're gonna get there. Oh, it's so fantastic. A wasteland of the United States that's divided between these factions that are all vying for control. Sounds familiar for a Jonathan Hickman style book, right?
Yeah.
But the overarching thing that comes along with that is that the four horsemen of the apocalypse, one has decided he doesn't want anything to with the apocalypse anymore, goes off, has a family, has a child, and now the other horsemen are after him, all while everything else is happening. Such an awesome story. But let's talk about drama as a category. One of them was my absolute favorite book the year that it was released, Maze Book by Jeff Lemire. Writing and both on writing duties and art. A father who loses his daughter, loses, his family essentially, right? Because he kind of falls into the pits of depression, learns to kind of find a way to pick himself back up. His life has changed, but his life is now at least he found a way to keep going, right? And man, I gotta say, I was crying like a baby by the end of this book. Still very emotional, but my favorite thing is Monsters was a harrowing story, told from a lot of different perspectives that is so incredible. The thing about this story is that it's not just what's in the book, it's about the making of the book as well. I encourage you, don't just read the story, really dive into how the story got made, because it is fascinating.
Is that part of the book by a chance?
No, and that's the thing.
It's a side
not.
thing? Okay,
No, it's not mentioned whatsoever. There are parts of the author's real life that they incorporate in here, but the making of this book has nothing to do with it.
For sure. But, aside from that, I think the horror genre is really, really great, especially this time of year. There's a lot of great horror books out there. One of the ones I remember, I went on vacation in like East Tennessee during the fall, winter time, right when the leaves were changing, and I brought autumnal with me. And I'm sitting there like reading the collected edition of autumnal in the middle of the woods and the mountains and some log cabin that we rented. And I'm sitting there like drinking my coffee at 6:30, 7 in the morning and like reading that book. It was such a great time. We talked about this guy named Ram V. He did a book called Blue and Green, which was incredible.
The other book out there on there, though, I was a huge fan of this. I'm a huge fan of this creator, Jeremy Hahn's Red Mother. I thought was arguably one of the books that made me feel the while reading it. It just like something about it was like it always like made you feel as you're reading it like there was something right over, and you don't get that all the time. Like sometimes it's gory and gross or bloody or something like that. This just made me feel creeped out, and I dig that about a horror book. That's the kind of stuff that I look for when it comes to that. So let's talk comedy. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Oh man, I love these books. I love the movie. I love the story. It is such a fantastic and hilarious look at a person in their late teens, early 20s, right? Because dating a teenage. Yeah.
That's kind of the crux of the beginning of the book. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Great storyline. I feel like that is a really, really accessible. And it's something that most people have lived through. A book that recently came out, Grommets, which was very similar, which, good Lord, did that hit me like right in the nostalgia feels, right? Skateboarding on the West Coast in the 80s, right? It just made me feel like I was, I don't know, 11 years old again, right? There are so many different things that book are like pulled on from the 80s era that did it so well. And I feel like Rick Remender, granted, he paired up with Brian Posehn, who's a comedian, so it totally makes sense that this was funny. I feel like they were stretching muscles that maybe kind of hadn't been stretched in a while, and I think that it was to the benefit of them, because this book is totally awesome. It was just so funny, so silly, and it felt so true to the 80s time frame. Another book that I feel like nobody talks about, in fact, there's a lot of people that probably haven't even heard about this, but Chip Zdarsky, one of the earlier works that they had worked on, Kaptara, that he did with Kagan McLeod, about a haphazard astronaut who finds himself going through this dimensional portal and finding themselves kind of in this Motu Masters of the Universe-esque universe. And and kind of working in that world. And all of the silly things that you see from the cartoon, like the Motu cartoon, Imagine experiencing that from an adult perspective, and you can kind of see where the comedy is coming from these characters. That's what you get from Kaptara. And oh man, let me tell you, Kagan McLeod's artwork is fantastic, man. That's where a lot of the comedy comes from, the expressiveness of the characters, the circumstances that they find themselves in. Really, really cool stuff. Particularly, like the wizard who uses his beard as a loincloth that wraps all the way from his chin around his waist. Kagan, perfect stuff there. Perfect stuff. Why don't we each throw out 2 superheroes, or two big 2 style books, we'll say, superheroic books, and 2 starting points, or 2 runs that we would recommend for those.
Okay.
I'm going to go with my tip top, my very favorite, which is none other than Daredevil. I would definitely read The Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. Get the origin story for that character. I want to say that I would give you another Frank Miller, but to give you a different flavor and a more modern look at that character, I would then recommend that you go back and read Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev's run on the character, which takes place in 2000. Those will write.
Yeah, that's a great one. The 2, I'll give you 2 right off the bat right here. So one is more of a way easier to consume, more modern book, but I'm going to say Tom King's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I will say that if you want to get into Supergirl, the character, obviously you can go back, but like the way that they took that character and changed it a little bit and added a little bit more drama to it. It's an origin story, but it also shows you a lot of her current day capabilities. There's not really anything that's going on after this. So you just read that limited series and you're done. It's going to set you up for the DCU when Supergirl comes out and whatever they're going to do with that character. But it does have that origin story element that we're talking about too. So if you want to get a good idea of who that character is, where they came from, what they're capable of, their mindset, their powers and everything, I think Tom King's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is a great place to start with Supergirl. And then, of course, like we talked about Batman 100 times, right? So, like, I mean, obviously, like start with your year ones, like your long Halloweens and things, and then kind of like go from there. I think that makes total sense. And then you can kind of pick up pretty much wherever you want to after that moment, Dark Victory and everything else. You can head in those directions. So if you want to get more in Batman, I would recommend going back a little bit, not too far, going to the late 80s. Mess around in there for a while and then kind of catch back up with some of the limited series like Batman and Robin Year One or Dark Patterns. Those are both very new books. They're going to be in collected format very soon. If you go from that late 80s Batman to those books, it's a great transition to more modern stuff, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll throw one more recommendation out there here. I'm going to go with my other favorite character on the other side of the street, though. We did Marvel. I'm going to go ahead and do DC. I'm going to go ahead and recommend that people check out Green Arrow. Is it a dude with a bow and arrow? Yes. And that's his superpower. Yeah, that's basically it. But he's a really fascinating character. I would recommend that people start with The Longbow Hunters by Mike Grell. Fantastic storyline. I think that people can really dig on a very short arc. Kevin Smith reignited people's fascination with the character in the early 2000s. He took over an arc, and that's not my recommendation. My recommendation comes right after that, actually. So nobody wanted to take over after Kevin Smith because it was big shoes to fill at the time from that perspective, because it was a dude from Hollywood playing in the comic book sandbox. A little known dude at the time named Brad Meltzer takes over the title and writes one of the absolute best 5-issue arcs of all time. Period, full stop. Like it really like distills that character down and like defines it in a really great way, even for new readers. Gives you a lot of history, but does a lot to like draw you in. And because it's ending here, I'm going to go ahead and shout it out one more time here too. If you like Green Arrow, make sure you're checking out Chris Condon's current run right here and right now with Montos. I think that is doing a fantastic job with the character, staying true to legacy, drawing upon some historical ideas within the book, but keeping it modern and fresh. And again, I'm just so sad that it's ending here, but check it out now, because every one of these big 2 books and runs always does end at a certain point, and this is just that book's time. I think it's going to be a great collective here.